Prowler is the older of the two GCI wood coasters at Worlds of Fun. This is a terrain-based out-and-back coaster through the woods with some quick directional changes. Sound familiar? It should. This ride is eerily similar to Kings Island's Mystic Timbers. In fact, this ride most likely inspired Mystic Timbers. For many, this is the best of the GCIs. But how does Prowler compare? Find out in this review. At the turn of the millennium, Worlds of Fun had a good decade of investment. They got 4 different roller coasters in a 9-year span. This included a Vekoma Boomerang, uninspiringly named Boomerang, one of the first Gerstlauer spinners and spinning dragons, a B&M Invert and Patriot, and lastly, a new wood coaster and Prowler. The latter opened in 2009. This would be the second wood coaster at Worlds of Fun after Timberwolf. The latter was a din coaster with a reputation as a rough ride. Prowler would be a much more modern ride with a more dynamic and faster-paced layout. Prowler was the second time that Cedar Fair would work with Great Coasters International or GCI in a ride. 2 years prior, they built Renegade at Valley Fair, and Cedar Fair has continued to work with GCI extensively. They have done a series of retracking projects, including one in Timberwolf at Worlds of Fun, and they've also built a few additional coasters. This includes Gold Striker at California's Great America in 2013, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island in 2017, and Zambezi Zinger at Worlds of Fun in 2023. Now, I mentioned at the start that Mystic Timbers was extremely similar to Prowler. Kings Island also got a big new roller coaster in 2009. They got abolished a Mabillard hypercoaster named Diamondback. This was widely considered to be the favorite for the best new ride in Amusement Today's Golden Ticket Award poll. However, it was surprisingly edged out by Prowler. The story goes that Kings Island was inspired by the coaster they lost to, so that's why Mystic Timbers is so similar to Prowler. The similarities are impossible to miss. They have nearly identical stats. Both have comparable layouts, and both are set a ways back from the main midway as they go out into the woods. Coincidentally, the best way to photograph each ride is to ride their respective train ride at each park. Pretty much the only parts of Prowler that you can see from the midway are the lift hill, the drop, and the second turn. The rest of the ride is set back among the trees. The final few humps used to be visible from the queue line for the ride's first decade of operation, but the trees have now grown in, obscuring those hills. Prowler is located in the African section of the park. This plot had been vacant for nearly a decade ever since the plunge wet-dry water slides were removed. To get to Prowler, you need to walk underneath the train tracks and then you can access the ride's queue line. There isn't any theming, but I really do like the coaster's cat-themed logo. It looks really cool. And I also liked how the operators in 2023 were saying meow with every dispatch. It brought a smile to my face. I have visited Worlds of Fun a few times, and Prowler has always been a walk-on for me. I know it can build up a line on a busy weekend, and especially on haunt nights, but I've personally never experienced that. Prowler runs 2 Millennium Flyer trains. Each train has 12 rows of 2, so each train holds a maximum of 24 riders. The crew dispatches trains at a good clip. But there are 2 operational notes from 2023 that I need to point out. First, it's a bit harder to get the seat you want now. In past years, they would let multiple rows of people queue in the station, so you could wait for whatever row you wanted. At least in the day I visited recently, the employees were only letting enough people in the station to fill the next train, and you had to fill in empty rows, so seating was on a first-come basis. Second, I've heard of Prowler having more downtime than past years. GCIs are usually really reliable, but I had multiple friends visit Worlds of Fun this year with Prowler closed for the day. Then my visit, Prowler was closed for half the day. I'm hoping this issue in particular can be rectified going forwards. In past years, I've had a strong preference for the front row on Prowler. The airtime was punchier, and it was considerably smoother, but after the recent track work, I thought the front and back were equally as good, so I recommend trying both. Once you're seated, you will find the older style seats that are more cushioned than the newer Millennium Flyers. Then you have a seatbelt and lap bar combination. The seatbelt is retractable, but it won't tighten during the ride like the ones on Renegade at Valley Fair. Then the lap bar is the usual T-shaped lap bar. I would recommend holding onto it once checked, otherwise it has a tendency to come down throughout the experience. making it harder to experience the airtime. Once dispatched, you turn out of the station, and oddly, this is now one of the rougher parts of the ride. It's still plenty tolerable though. You then climb the 10-story tall lift hill. It is a pretty loud lift hill. Once at the top, you don't get too much of a view, but that's fine because you go straight into the drop. It is an 86-foot or 26-meter tall swooping drop. You get okay floater airtime in the back, but the drop is more about the laterals. The twist left offers great laterals, especially if you're further back in the train. You will likely be pinned to the side of the car. You then have a big L turn. The entry is the most sustained airtime moment on the ride if you're up front. You'll get solid and very sustained floater there. In back, you'll only get a little lift here. You then turn left and have a big drop into the woods. This offers good sustained floater airtime in the rear rows. The outward leg is a few bunny hills that turn in between, so you get a smidge of laterals and some nice negative Gs. These hills are super low to the ground as well, so you'll carry your speed beautifully. Think of Mystic Timbers here. The first bunny hill is the best of the bunch. You'll get decent sustained floater throughout the train. The second one just rises upwards, so you'll only lift out of your seat a little bit here. You then have an S-bend into the third bunny hill. This one's nice sustained floater like the initial one. You then enter the far turnaround. It is not too tall, and you level off pretty abruptly at the top, so you get a good pop of airtime up front. This is followed by a 270-degree bank turn left, with some laterals. It ends with an elevated bunny hill. It offers a weak burst of airtime, but it is much milder than the others on the ride. You then quickly jump upwards, getting a nice pop of airtime up front. You then turn left and have a fairly shallow drop, so unfortunately, there's no airtime in those rear rows. Prowler then has a small and slightly off-axis bunny hill, which offers a smidge of airtime. This turnaround section is a bit unique, but it doesn't have the same oomph as the other hills on the ride. Then you start the return run. You rise slightly upwards and have a decent sized drop. I believe it's the third largest on the ride, so if you're in the back row, you'll get some good sustained floater coming down. You then have 3 straight bunny hops. Up front, the first one is a really nice burst of airtime. The next 2 have fine pops as well. All 3 of these hills will chuck you from your seat as well in the back, particularly the dip after the second bunny hill because it has a little extra height because of the terrain. You then jump upwards, getting one last bit of airtime up front. Then you have a right turn and a 180-degree left turn into the brakes. These final turns are shockingly mellow compared to everything else, but it's fine because everything leading up to it is so good. You then return to the station, ending the 3,074-foot or 937-meter long coaster. In terms of pacing, Prowler is quite good. The terrain-hugging layout allows the coaster to keep its speed, and that speed is further accentuated by the proximity of the trees. The layout has no shortage of bunny hills either, and the side-to-side action adds some variety. Now, what about the smoothness? As of this recording, Prowler is running fantastic. It is the smoothest I have ever seen this coaster. It's not glass smooth, but it's very smooth for a wood coaster as dynamic as this. And I hope it stays this way because, as I noted earlier, I did get some bumpy rides further back in the train in past years. The one final thing I need to note before giving my final score is that I unfortunately have not been able to ride Prowler at night. This coaster supposedly gives legendary night rides, and I can certainly see why. The woodsy setting would have 0 lights back there. The park closed too early in past visits. Now, when we booked our recent Missouri trip, Worlds of Fun hadn't yet posted their hours. I knew late September would be haunt season, and I erroneously assumed they would have the event on a Sunday night. But nope, they did not have haunt that night. The park closed right before sunset, so Prowler night rides once again eluded me. So what would I rate Prowler? I would give this coaster an 8 out of 10. This is a good GCI wood coaster, and I recently got my best rides ever on this coaster. I love the terrain use and setting. I also adore this ride's pacing. Then the airtime is quite good as you can mix a sustained airtime plus quicker pops, and the ride is running smoothly as of 2023. This has been an issue in past years, and I think this is why I didn't enjoy Prowler quite as much as others did. I now put it in the upper half of my GCI ranks. I always thought it had potential, and I now see the light. I hope the ride continues to run this way going forwards. But is it better than Mystic Timbers? No, but remember, Mystic Timbers is my favorite GCI, so it's a high bar to compare against. I think Mystic Timbers is better airtime, both in terms of quantity and quality. As I mentioned in the element by element breakdown, Prowler does have that little lull in the far turnaround, and you don't have that in Mystic Timbers. The other ride I have to compare Prowler to is Worlds of Fun's new for 2023 coaster in Zambezi Zinger. This was another GCI wood coaster that would be a terrain-based ride, but that's about where the comparisons end. Zambezi Zinger is more about the laterals and directional changes. Prowler is more airtime-centric and intense. The two rides complement each other beautifully. So those are my thoughts on Prowler at Worlds of Fun. What are your thoughts on this ride? Let me know your thoughts, and how do you think it compares to the other GCIs? Comment down below. If you enjoyed this review, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.